For anybody watching, this is the Go Guide podcast. I don't know what episode we are on right now, but we are with Brian Sheppard. His company is CityFly, and he was truly one of the first partners that we had at Go Guide. Absolutely incredible guy to work with, somebody who was willing to take a chance on us very early, which has been really, really cool. It's been awesome working with you, and I'm so glad that we are able to kind of be a partner here. So thanks for hopping on. Looking forward to talking for a little bit.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start this like I typically start every podcast. I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. I'd love to hear how you got into fly fishing, where that happened, who kind of got you into it, and how do you find yourself right now operating a guide service? How did that matriculate over time?
Well, I never thought that the day I saw a river runs through it, and I was probably 11 years old, that, I would be doing this as a living. And my whole world would revolve around it. I just knew as a child when I saw that, and I saw people fly fishing in the farm country of Indiana, that I knew that I had to learn this magical art, whatever that was. And so I got my first fly rod when I was 13 years old. And I spent every summer as a kid growing up in the Poconos, in and around the Poconos in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And so that first summer with a fly rod, I had a family friend, Bob Romano, who's a really great fly fishing author, volunteered to take me out for my first sulfur hatch on a small river in New Jersey. And we didn't catch anything, but I was in love with it from that moment on. And, a week later, I started tying flies, catching bluegill in the ponds. I took all that back to Indiana and ruminated on it for a while. And then fast forward to New York probably 10 years ago. And I'd been out of fly fishing for a while. I hadn't tied flies. I hadn't really gotten a chance to do very much of it. And I was going through a pretty rough patch. And I was like, what is the one thing in my life that is something that I can escape to? And fly fishing kind of showed up on my front door. And from that point on, I found small ways to make it part of my life. And fast forward to probably about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago.
Okay, was there a...
Yeah, I couldn't hear anything for a second. I heard a car engine.
Oh, gotcha.
It's all good.
I think that might be on my side of things, actually.
It's all good. So I found myself kind of back into the fly fishing world and kind of discovering it anew as an adult in Central Park and in Prospect Park here in Manhattan. And little did I know that I was in like the best state in the world to run in every direction and fly fish for whatever I wanted to fly fish for, from the salt to the mountains. It didn't matter. About 2016, I'd say, I decided to try my hand at commercial fly tying. And that never really picked up. But while I was trying to do this and forming what is now CityFly, I was having a lot of demand for people wanting to learn how to fly fish. So I would meet people before my evening job. I'd meet them over in Central Park. We'd fly fish for a few hours, and that grew and grew and grew. And now it's not only fly fishing classes throughout the summer, but more importantly, it's probably about 5 straight months of guiding on the Upper Delaware, on the Housatonic, the Farmington, places like that. So it snowballed completely out of my control. I'm still trying to figure out where it's going and what it's going to look like in a year or two. But if the last year has been any indication, I think we'll be fly fishing 250 plus days on the water, teaching hundreds of people. And it's in an upward swing. So guiding found me. I did not go looking for it in any capacity.
That's super cool. And the cool thing that stood out to me when we first met and I first got to talk to you was that you kind of take people through the full spectrum of their fly fishing journey, which I find super interesting, is that you actually start with them very early on and teaching them casting lessons. And some of those people actually end up maybe even guiding for you. So I'd love to hear how that all starts and like the experience of those people, how that typically works out.
Yeah, I remember my first feeling, the day I first stepped into a river, or the day I first cast a fly rod. I remember this like it was yesterday. And the excitement that it gave me and the wonder and everything, especially as a kid. and then finding it again later on when it kind of saved my life. And I find this too when I work with veterans a lot. The mindset of somebody after they've gone outside and experienced this, whether fishing aside, then they've gone through the steps and they've learned the technique and they catch their first fish, or they, heck, see their first bald eagle, experience their first hatch, feel the water around their legs for the first time. It's a transformative experience. And so I think my mindset, and as a guide too, it's not really about the fish. I'm not there to take people to catch 500 fish. It's not going to happen where we live. It really isn't. I'm there to give people an experience and to watch some of their anxieties and things melt away, and see them find the outdoors for the first time, all over again, as I was lucky enough to do as a kid, and again over and over and over. And when I work for Project Healing Waters, for instance, and I take veterans out every month, I watch them start the day in one place in their life and experience, and they end in an entirely new place. And we never even talk about the fish. We could catch fish and it's wonderful, but the experience and immersion of it is so powerful for people. And I think that's my focus. Unlike other guides who are really great fishermen and just, they're going to go out and give you a really excellent large fish and show you the wildest fishing you've ever seen. That's great. But if I can leave at the end of the day and have someone's life change and have them say, man, I want to learn more, I want to see what more there is to offer, my job is done. And that's my goal. It's not about the fish.
Yeah.
It's about the way this sport can save your life, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Kind of usually at the end of somebody's fly fishing career too, once they've caught a lot of fish, and it's just being out there. It's just standing out in the river and enjoying that time. So it's important at the beginning of that process if you can teach people.
Sure.
It's really not about catching the fish as much. Like, that's an awesome perk, but
it is awesome. And if you want to, like, go to Colorado, go to Montana, catch a shit ton of fish, go to town, and that's fine. And like, I'm with you there. I would totally love to do that. But what we have to offer is truly wild trout, and super selective wild trout that are wily as all heck, in a beautiful spot in the Catskills, and on the other side of things, the Hudson Valley into Connecticut, into Pennsylvania. We have beautiful resources that are so wild and challenging that I think you could spend your whole life on these fisheries and never quite solve them. Every single day is a challenge, and I think that's also part of what keeps my students coming back over and over, is they see how truly difficult it can be, and then how rewarding it can be when you've worked on your technique so focused and in such an extreme way, and then to have it pay off and to watch that moment for people and to net that fish. We talk about those moments forever. We forget what the fish was like, or even what species it might have been, but we remember the moment that it all came together for him. And I think as a teacher, to watch that come into full circle is really exciting.
Definitely.
That's what I can promise you. I can promise you that you're going to have an amazing experience, no matter who you're with out here, but it will have very little to do with your trout.
Definitely.
It's cool.
You had mentioned and kind of phrased it as fly fishing saved you. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and kind of that period of your life, and how you kind of were able to get out of that through fly fishing. Like, what do you think it was about fly fishing that was able to do that for you?
Yeah, I think at the time that I found it, probably about a decade ago, where I kind of came back into the world of it, I'd gone through some tragedy in my life and lost some people that were really close to me, in pretty awful ways. And I was, here I was, like an out of work actor in New York, just trying to like figure out how to pay my bills. And I went on meetup.com before it was like part of Facebook, and there was a fly tying meetup about 10 blocks from my apartment. So I dug out my old little vise. I still have it back here behind me. But I dug out my little vise from when I was a kid, and I showed up, and I remember we tied a couple flies, and I met such a wonderful group of people who scooped me up and took me fishing. And it took me from a place where I was really unsure about my future and if there would be a future, and it was truly a low point in every way. And that gave me a new purpose, entirely new purpose, that allowed me to escape the stressors of my acting career, the stressors of survival in New York City, which is like its own animal. Um, it let me escape some of the hardships and some of the loss that I had just gone through, and uncertainty, and it gave me a place to belong. And it never went away. I mean, I ended up, I think at that point, I went up to the Neversink and fished the Neversink every Sunday for 5 years after that. I would drive up there and fish just to escape. And I can say that that saved my life. I found peace in a way without kind of self-medication or any of the things that we might do, all because I was standing in a river surrounded by water and nature. Um, you know, and I watch it happen to my friends. I watch it happen to the veterans that I'm proud to guide and to teach. And I watch them get saved and find a new purpose as well while you're grasping at all these outside things. And in the end, it's just all very simple. I think you know what I mean. It's
Definitely. Yeah, it's one of those things that you just kind of, it's one of those things where you just finally relax. Like after a long time not fishing, I get a little wound up, and then I finally step into a river, and for me, things just kind of mellow out a little bit.
absolutely. When I have clients in the boat, the most common thing, especially if they're from a city, um, is I can see it in their cast in the loop. I can see whether or not they're breathing, and even though I'm usually sitting behind, my client or my student, and I can always just remind them to breathe because people don't. They hold their breath. They're tense. They're tight. They're focused so much on getting it right, whatever that means. And when you give them the permission to, hey, look at that eagle, check out that bear. Hey, there's a rising trout. Let's have fun and try to catch it. And it's going to be a nice time. You watch their entire body shift and their mind shift. And at the end of the day, they leave so happy, and they don't remember what the day was like. They just know that for the first time they were able to stop and smell the roses, literally. And if that's all I can leave people with, awesome. My job is done, you know?
Absolutely. Um, a piece that you talked about with kind of the saving pieces, the community that was kind of able to grab you up and kind of take you out of that situation. And I've found that the fly fishing community is very close and super willing to take people with open arms. What's been your experience in the fly fishing community? And then is there specifically a community around your area that you'd like to talk about?
Absolutely. I think when I started, there was a small community here, but it wasn't really a cohesive unit. And now we have groups like our New York City Trout Unlimited chapter, which is growing, and Metropolitan Fly Fishing Club. And all of these groups are growing larger and larger. Now I think we're at an all-time high for fly fishermen in the city and in the metropolitan area. Um, so anybody who's interested of all skill levels, you have thousands of people in your backyard, like ready to take you fishing. And I found that when I was getting my start back into the sport, and that I've taken it upon myself to be that person for the next group of adults and children or whoever that may be that want to come in and join it. Now, not only here in Manhattan, but up on the Delaware, we've got, the Delaware River Club and cross current fly fishing, and probably one of the most family oriented, kind group of guides I've ever, gotten to meet. They have taken me in, and I know, like, when I wanted to start guiding, I had no idea what I was doing. I had a raft that I could fit one person on and an extra rod and no clue. And I was taken in, I was loaned a boat and said, here's a client, here's kind of how you want to approach it. And over the years, my mentors have been the guides that I have idolized for the last, 15 years. And so every day I go to work, I'm going to work next to like my heroes, every single one of them. And it's taught me a lot about opening that community up for the next person, because man, they've given me everything, down to a roof over my head, literally, by being able to guide, even though I was the clueless kid coming in from the city who like quit his restaurant job and said, I'm here, I got to do this and I got to figure it out. And we've got to start right now. I got bills to pay, and I knew nothing. I just knew that I loved the sport and I loved netting friends for my fish and watching the smiles on their face. And this community has completely taken me in, and also supported me in the form of like a lot of these friends or students are now my clients, and it grows and grows and grows, and it's just like this really awesome family of people that would give you the shirt off their back. It's truly the best people in the world that I've ever met. Every single day when I step on that river and I look over at the next guide over, I'm like, that guy or that girl, those are amazing people. And those are some of the best guides I have ever seen work day after day. And their clients, and as a result, end up being truly phenomenal as well. And so it's just like, it's a fly fishing playground out there that I'm really happy to be part of. I don't know. How about you? For you, I imagine it as part of Go Guide and the guides that you work with and the clients have given back to you in a tremendous way.
Absolutely. Yeah, for us, it's been interesting because as a young guy coming into an industry of people that are typically at an older age, it's a little bit nerve wracking. Definitely something that we all felt coming into it is like, gosh, we don't know anything. And I think luckily one of the best things that we were able to do is take that approach and be like, we actually don't know anything, so we should go to people that do know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And then build something that works for them, not something that works for us, because we're not building it for us. Something that actually works for the guides, works for a fly shop owner, or works for the busy manager at a fly shop or an outfitter who's trying to keep everything together, right? So yeah, once we made that mental shift of it's not a system that we're building for ourselves, it's a system that we're building for our guides and outfitters, everything changed. Honestly, the guides and the outfitters that we've worked with are the people that have built our system, like start to finish. We always come to them with questions, and it's always like, hey, how can we make it better? And that's how we've been able to. So yeah, definitely an incredible community of people. I mean, going to the fly fishing shows, everybody is just warm, like open arms, willing to connect you to people. It's been fantastic. We've been very lucky.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more, like get in more with the people out on the in the Northeast. I feel like we haven't gotten as much time out there because I'm from the South and we spend a lot of time in Colorado, but we'll find our way out there and hopefully do some fishing too.
Please.
Well, yeah, I would love to. I guess I'd love to hear kind of like the acting part of your career as well. What's like? How has it been managing both? Because I know that those are two different, very different things. I would imagine, and you're kind of balancing those at the same time. How does that look for you?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a tightrope walk every single day. I go through a lot of back and forth in my brain leading up to guide season. I do guide year round. I do spay all winter long, and I try to keep at least classes of some kind going in the winter and tying and stuff. But when it comes into my busy season, which is like late April through the end of June, that's like super busy. It is tough, and I do worry all the time about booking something and having to leave my clients, and vice versa, having to take over clients and keep people happy while maintaining like some presence in my acting career. And now I think I'm coming to a pretty good peace with it all, and that however it's meant to work out, it's going to work out. Now it does require having my Go Guide calendar up to date. It's like I am my own office full of secretaries trying to run and keep track of everything going on at the same time, and they are quite different, and they take place in geographically really different places. And so like I'm sending tapes from my apartment up north in the mountains. I'm sending tapes to Atlanta for auditions a lot. I'm sending tapes to New York City. I'm doing theater this fall. I'm doing a play over in the Catskills over near the Hudson Valley. And so like, I'll have to balance that. So I do kind of have to reach out and almost be in multiple cities at one time. And that just means that I live on this thing with a calendar, and I'm constantly trying to juggle and keep track of everything. And then on my free time when I'm not guiding, I'm studying. And, like right today, I'm reading 3 plays, studying for a movie that's in July. And I got to re-rig for my classes tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
So like, you just have to keep going and keep your head down and trust that whatever's meant to happen is how it's going to work out. Because there's very little control over any of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the
Yeah,
world of, in the world of TV, it's like I'm lucky to work only 3 days a year or 4 days a year. That's a good year for me on a TV set. So there's a lot of downtime in there to really stay on the river and work.
mhm.
If I can find a way to combine the two, ultimately, I think that'll be the dream, is to do more with film and TV and fly fishing and the outdoors in
Mhm.
one. But I haven't figured out what that looks like yet. So
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're juggling a lot, but it sounds like you're also progressing in all of them. So that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Um, so I'd love to hear about the casting lessons in New York City. I think that that's something that is really incredible. I want everybody in New York to know that this is this is a thing that people can do. Tell me a little bit more about how those casting lessons look. What does a day
Yeah.
look like
So
with you?
so like a general lesson, and this is kind of where it all started for me back in 2016, is that I was giving like kind of a beginner lessons to my friends. Like I take them out, I teach them how to set up a rod, what the gear was, what the flies were, what you use them for. We'd stand in Harlem on the Harlem Pier in Central Park. We'd fly fish for an hour or two, and at the end they're like, "Wow, this is amazing. You should teach this." So I took that model and started a beginners class. That's a 3 hour start to finish beginners class, where by the end you're catching bluegill in the park, just like we all started out doing. You can cast, you have a pretty proficient cast, you know how to tie some of your own knots, you know what the flies generally are, and you have enough that you can step out and try to do it on your own, even if it's just a little bit. Um, so I started doing those, and then I found even almost more of a need for just 2 hour long casting lessons. Now, I'm not a certified casting instructor through like FFI or anything, um, but I realized that I have an affinity for teaching complete newbies how to cast and getting them like up to speed within a matter of half an hour, 45 minutes. And there's a lot of need here for people who dabble but really want to perfect their technique, or people who do a lot of salt. So I get a lot of like distance casters who want to have more distance. And I've kind of done it on the fly and taught myself how to teach them. But now it's, I'd say probably 75% of the business now is really people coming to me for a brush up before they come to Colorado, or, hey, I'm going to Patagonia next week. I've never cast a fly rod. What am I doing? Can you get me there? And it's okay. We got an hour. Let's get you ready to go fish for GTs somewhere. Like it's a tall order, and that's a lot of what it is. It's a lot of the Wall Street client who come and they want a big trip, or a kid who says, I want to fish with my dad in Colorado next week and I want to learn how to cast. Okay, let's get you ready. So that's starting to pick up. It's not really something I open up in the early season because I'm guiding so much, but now going through July and mainly in August and September, I'll start to pick up some more of those types of lessons in between guide trips.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that's super needed. Like,
Yeah.
especially going saltwater. Like I've fished my whole life on rivers and small streams and stuff like that. Um, the move to saltwater and my first ever trip, like chasing permit, was a completely different. Like I could have absolutely used somebody who would quickly, for 1 to 2 hours, just watch my cast and get me up to speed. Because really, the preparation is before you go on that trip, because you don't want your first shot at a permit to get completely ruined by a bad cast. Like you need to be ready for that to happen. So
Absolutely.
I think everybody that's going on one of these trips should consider finding somebody in their area to quickly brush up the cast, make sure that they're ready so they show up
Absolutely. And it's like
dialed.
when people come to me on the river, for instance, and they want to go on a Delaware River dry fly float, um, even in mid May when it's kind of at its peak, they approach me and they're like, I want to do this. I'm ready to go. And I'm like, well, you also have to practice. This is not, it's like the major leagues of dry fly fishing. So, we call it the Olympics, really. And so it's like you don't train for that. You don't train to go jump those hurdles the night before you jump them in the Olympics. You need to practice. You need a 45, 50-foot cast. You need to mend and feed. You know how to farm a fly to a fish that's 65 feet away, in crystal clear water in low water conditions with a 15-foot leader or a 14-foot leader and a size 24 blue wing olive. So that requires practice. And it's not going to happen on your first trip. It might. It does. We get struck by lightning. Unicorns fly out of the woods. You might catch that fish. It does happen. But most of the time, you need practice, and it's probably going to take you several trips. It took me 4 years of work before I was ready for that moment to happen. And so I try to instill in my clients either meet me ahead of time and train for it. If not with me, then I'll find you somebody. Or come to the Delaware, meet me an hour early at least, if, at the very minimum, and we're going to put you through your paces before you get on the boat, so that when your heart's pounding and fish are rising, you make that count, because that first cast is truly your best chance. And so I can't stress enough like how important preparation and training is for everybody in the sport if you want to excel and kind of shortcut some of these headaches that you face and some of the stress. And like I see people get up, grown men and women get up, like their heart's pounding and they're almost shaking and they're botching the cast and their head's spinning and they don't know what to do, they're not breathing. And it's like, no, you got to get in a zen state. We got to like prepare for this moment so that you can stand up and make it count and not be terrified, because it is like terrifying for people. And that's kind of what I want to demystify, because I know what it feels like,
Absolutely. And I think that's honestly a huge important piece of what it is to be a guide. Is I see the really great guides, like they don't just let a client, especially a client that's not super comfortable with their cast and stuff, just go ahead and make that cast to the fish. It's like, hey, if I know that they're a little iffy, like let's reel it back. Let's go to a place where we're not about to blow up a fish or anything like that.
Yep.
Let's see if we can make that cast here first.
Yes.
And then we can translate that over to something else. And that first cast is always so important. So, I mean, I think that's a big piece, is preparing those clients even before we're actually making those casts.
Right. And you talked about your saltwater experience, and how you found yourself kind of, I imagine the feelings were like being overwhelmed, a little intimidated.
I was all over the place.
Really excited. Yeah. Adrenaline's through the roof. And I get that totally, and I watch it get in people's way every single day. And it's true as an actor. I can tell you story after story about that kind of feeling. But the more that you help prepare people to have the best experience that they're ready to have at that level of experience and that level of skill, that's truly the best you can do. I'm very honest when I take clients out. I will tell them, look, there's going to be fish, there's targets, or no, today is going to be really tough and we're going to have to work really hard to find our fish. But if we get out and we focus on the technique and have fun with it and forget about the fish part of it, just let them go, but work on whatever skill set it is we're working, whether we're nymphing this run, we're spay fishing this run, we're dry fly fishing, focus on the fun part of it and the feel and enjoy it and breathe. And then and only then, when you're ready, you'll be rewarded. And it's going to happen. It's probably going to happen when you're not even stressed out and like freaking out over what you're seeing in front of you, the 10 rising fish. It's going to happen when you just let it go and enjoy the feeling of being out there. Especially if you're prepared with those techniques. It's a challenge for people. I think people come with expectations, especially those that come from the West. And they'll come to us and say, I just got back from Montana. I caught 10,000 fish. This is rad, man. Like, totally, let's rock on. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about like where we are now and what you're going to see. Let's dial it back and let's take an hour or two of practice to prepare you for a whole different experience and challenge. I think that services people a lot more than just saying like, there's a fish, go cast at it, figure it out. And me tuning you out and just rowing the boat and letting you just fish. I could do that all day long, but are you going to get a lot out of it? Are you going to remember that day? Probably not. Mm-hmm. You're going to walk away being the same angler you were before, but probably a little pissed off because, no one helped you, no one taught you, no one showed you, no one encouraged you. Mm-hmm. And that would be a crime.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as far as teaching somebody else, what have you learned about yourself through that process of like, what do you love about the teaching process? And I think you're in a very cool position where you get to teach a lot of different anglers at different stages of their angling career. I'd love to hear a little bit about how that affects you as a person.
Yeah. The thing that I learned is that you have to be really kind to yourself. And it's a general life lesson, obviously, but you've got to go. I see people beat themselves up a lot, and I know how that feels. I went to grad school. I beat myself up every day for years and years and years and years. But you've got to give yourself a break and realize it's just fishing. You've got to keep the positivity, the excitement, a lot of the curiosity. And as a teacher, that's what gets me excited too. I can go in and tune in the same lesson every day and be asleep by noon, bored out of my brain, and so will the client and the student. But if you keep everything positive and curious and embrace the challenge and the fact that this is a lifelong sport and that it's just fishing at the end of the day with feathers on a hook for a fish, like, it's all going to be okay. And I think that's a huge weight off of people's shoulders. And for me as a teacher, that's a big point. On my Yeti cooler in my boat, I have a fly patch that says "Guide, not God." There's only so much in our lives that we can control. So if you put some positivity and some creativity behind the times that what you can control, and then let go of the rest and just focus on having like a really cool day on the water with friends, that at the end of the day is life, right? Those are the moments that we realize, that we remember, that are the landmarks of our life as we go on. It's not the days of no fish in between, or the rainy, miserable day on the water, or whatever it might be, or losing the fish of a lifetime. No, it's the streamer float in the middle of a rainstorm with two buddies on a boat in the middle of nowhere, just having fun and embracing the fact that here we are, doing this wild thing in a beautiful place. And that is a reminder every day that it's all out of our control. We're just here to like make a memory out of it. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the whole piece of being able to realize, like, if we can let go of the things that we can't control, focus on what we can control, whether it's fly fishing, whether it's just life in general, like, that is the way to get anxiety out the window. For myself, I found that to be something just massive, is thinking about it every single time something is stressing me out. Is this something I can control? If so, I can do something about it. And so let's go and do something about it. Right. And if it's not something I can control, let's just let that one go. It's not something to worry about right now.
I watch people beat themselves up all the time. Like, I'll watch somebody catch, hook a fish of a lifetime, or get an eat by the fish of a lifetime, or something that would be really, it's really epic, or something we might work a fish for 2 hours and finally get the moment to come together. And then something happens. A hook set is too slow, too fast. Something breaks, God forbid, whatever it may be. And at the end, that's a victory. Like, all you can do is hope that you get the affirmation that your technique and your approach is good. And some days that is all that we leave the river with. And there was never a fish in sight. And you have to take those moments, and it's true for everything. You have to take those little victories as a sign that you're on the right track and you're doing what you're meant to do, and you just need to keep growing. And the next time, or the next time, or the next time, it might all pay off. But you'll remember that moment forever, and it's going to teach you a lot. I learned so much by watching other people fish. I'm sure all the guides at Go Guide feel the same way. I learned so much by watching someone do it and not catch the fish. And I think they learn probably more when that happens than ever. And if you can get somebody to realize that, they have a much more enjoyable day. What are you going to do? It's just fishing.
Yeah, it is. It is just fishing at the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, recently me and Seth, I don't know if you met Seth, but me and him were down in Baja, and we were chasing rooster fish for a week. So difficult.
Sounds miserable.
Surf casting. I mean, it was beautiful. But the fish themselves, I mean, surf casting, running up and down the beaches, trying to chase them down, and I mean, just never getting anything really. No looks, no bites. Finally, I did end up, like, one of the last days, hooking a huge rooster fish. Actually, it was while I was blind casting, which is pretty strange. But I ended up fighting that fish. It was the craziest fight of my life. I had, in my mind, had been like, this is like the epitome of fly fishing for me, rooster fish. So super excited, just heart racing, incredible moment. and then ended up losing that fish right at the beach. When it was done, I could have brought that fish in easily. We could have grabbed it. Like, it was over at the last second. The hook popped out and broke the line. Right? And for me, like, that could either be the best memory of my life, which it is, or I could think about it in a negative connotation, like, gosh, like, I'll never catch a fish like that again or anything like that. And at the end of the day, like, that's the whole point of the chase. Like, it's the memory, it's the experience with a great friend, it's the moments that you got to share. It's not, at the end of the day, the picture of holding up the roosterfish, which, like, would be incredible. Don't get me wrong.
And it
But
will
like,
happen. And it will happen one day when it's meant to happen.
exactly. If it had happened on my first trip ever chasing roosterfish, I would have probably not chased roosterfish anymore in Baja. But now I'm going to go back every single year because I need to feel that again, because those memories are incredible. So I think that that's a massive piece of this whole fly fishing experience is, don't let the ones that you lose get you down. It's more about, what did you learn from that situation? Like, what did we do wrong? What happened? Like, how can we do better the next time? If we do get this opportunity again, like, how do we capitalize on it? You learn so much from the fish you lose. So,
Amen.
I would love to hear a little bit more about the fisheries in that area. I'm actually pretty unfamiliar with the Delaware and the rivers that you fish in that area. Love to hear a little bit more about them from you. What are the fisheries like? And what's your experience been fishing them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it runs the gamut. The Delaware system, where I do my drift float, my floats from, that I stick mainly with the upper west branch of the Delaware River. So I do about 13 to 14 miles of that lower stretch, and then I do the upper main stem of the Delaware as well, for trout and for smallmouth. It's definitely a highly selective wild trout fishery with some truly cunning, tricky fish. We've got about, they say about an average of only 1,200 fish per square mile, which compared to the West is really, really, that's a tenth of what you might find out West. So for us, it's more like launching a NASA space shuttle some days and getting it to land on like the moon and make everything work out right. Like, it can be truly some of the most difficult fishing you've ever done. But it's truly wild. Runs all the way down through the Catskills, and then the main stem's going to run all the way down into the salt. We also have water closer to here. We've got the Raritan in New Jersey, right outside the city, where people can go and hone their nymphing skills on stock trout. 55 minutes from my door here in Harlem. The Housatonic and the Farmington, Connecticut, straight up, are also world-class fisheries, mainly partially stocked. Some with wild and some with holdover, but we have miles and hundreds of miles of rivers within an hour to an hour and a half of here. The Neversink is truly magical. The Mongop. We have everything from small creek, brookie fishing to, completely wild brown fishery within reach of Manhattan and in the metro area. All the way up into the Adirondacks and beyond. So.
What is your favorite fishery in the area? And I would love to hear, what's your favorite fishery to fish, and then what's your favorite to guide as well?
Well, my favorite one to fish. Okay, so trout would definitely be the West Branch of the Delaware. It's like my home water, and I live on it every day. And if I'm off for a day, I'm probably still out there, like, trying to figure it out, because it's truly like cracking a safe. And I would say my favorite fishery to fish, I can't really say out loud, but it's definitely, I have some small musky water far up and far away. That is probably my obsession, and all of my friends' obsessions. And if I'm going to spend time hunting for like the fish of a lifetime, it's going to be with a musky fly in skinny water, in the back, like total backwater, far away from other people. And I'm obsessed with that. So I think like that moment for me, you talked about the roosterfish, and for me, that's I remember like my first muskie. I remember my first like dozen muskie, because they all happened in a 2-day period. Mm-hmm. And every single one was the most thrilling thing I've ever done, including 2 that I lost, which were like record class fish. I saw them up to the boat. They were in the net and lost them. That were truly these upper 50, low 60s class fish. And I watched them spit the fly and swim away. And so that I think is like what I'm currently living for on my own time. If I'm going to hunt, that's what I want to hunt.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot of awesome things about the musky fishery in general, and like it's on my list of things to start chasing. But I've also heard that boy are they tough in general.
Yeah. I mean, you're fishing for a fish that eats. It's like an alligator that eats once every now and then, and you've got to happen to run a fly in front of its face the moment it decides to chew on something, and then it's going to play with it like a cat toy. So your chances, the odds are so stacked against you. So when that moment happens, and it's like lightning striking. And I think every musky fisherman will tell you, it never gets old. It's painful, it's miserable, it's hard. You want to quit every day, every minute of every day. You're beaten up. You should probably go to the hospital to get a new rotator cuff. But at the end of the day, it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
It is hard to beat.
And the hardest things are almost always the most rewarding. So that's why we do it.
That's it.
What about saltwater fishing? Is saltwater fishing something that you do a lot of? What's kind of your favorite? Where's it taken you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I haven't done a lot of it. I haven't, as far as where it's taken me, I haven't traveled much for fly fishing. I've never had opportunities to travel out west. I've never had the opportunities to do a destination fishing trip or anything like that. It's just never been in the cards. And so a lot of my saltwater fishing has been kind of local. I go out to Rockaway Beach where I surf, and I will surf during the day, and then in the evening, like as the sun is setting, I'll fish the rip for striper and bluefish. I go up to fish with a really good guide in Newport, Rhode Island, Captain Jim Barr, and that's kind of where I learned to striper fish, is in coastal Newport, kind of up in the Kenny Abrams territory, false albacore, things like that. That's been my saltwater experience. I don't get to do it very often, but I will never turn down an opportunity if I can. I just think it's the raddest stuff. I think those guides are like truly some of the most talented, impressive captains in the world. And so like that is something I've only dabbled with, and I want to do it more because it's awesome. I would love to chase rooster fish or do, bone fishing, permit fishing, tarpon. It just has yet to happen. So
yeah, no, there's a lot of cool DIY stuff you can do. I mean, our Baja trip was all DIY, living out of our car. And it was fantastic. So definitely a lot of stuff to be able to do. It's one of those things like, yeah, I guess you just gotta jump in the car and go. I would love to hear, so as far as like the areas that you fish, what have been like the best communities as far as the guides bringing you in? Like you were talking about kind of like the Delaware as a guide community that you really appreciate. Is that kind of the main guide community around the area, or are there a couple different, like within the Catskills? I'm kind of unfamiliar with the whole territory. So
sure, and it's still like parts of it are still foreign to me because there's a lot of it that I don't go and do, and there's a lot of areas like Phoenicia and the area around the Esopus. There's groups of guides there, and I have friends who guide there. It's just not my territory. I don't know. So there are other pockets, kind of people who do different things. You go coastal, you go towards Long Island. You've got, your captains and your, those cool dudes over there. The Delaware, it's our season, so-called season, is relatively short. So it's an intense 2 to 3 months where you've got hundreds of guides in one town hustling to make it work and running trips on the East Branch, the West Branch, upwards of 20, 30, 40 miles of river that we're all trying to share and coordinate respectfully. And so for the month of May, for instance, we have tons and tons of people around, and it's a really generally pretty nice and respectful and kind place to be, that are really welcoming to outsiders. They let me in. Every year I see new guides come in who are like right out of high school or right out of college, or adults who want to retire and change careers. And I have yet to see someone come in and not being taken care of, not being like supported. People give me clients. I give new people clients if I have overflow, or I'll take them on my group trips with me to like keep them busy. Parts of it are insular, like certain clubs might be insular or certain lodges might be insular, but The best ones, I think, are really, really welcoming. We all sit down for a beer and a burger at the end of the night together and talk to each other. We all call each other in the morning and try to get intel on like what's fishing well, what bugs we're seeing where. I mean, it's such a insect-centric game where we are, and it's so immense that we're constantly on the coconut telephone trying to figure out, okay, I've got this bug in this size here, from here to here this time of day, and then here to there this time of day, and where are you going, and I want to make sure I don't step on your water, so let's coordinate our floats. And I think there's a lot, those of us who take it seriously and do it year round, especially there, and have to like live in this environment full time, we really do play as a team together. And it's an everyday thing. I mean, I would field and make calls for probably half a dozen people a day. We're all discussing where we're going, what's hatching, what we're seeing, what's not working, what we all need to shift and try to adapt to, because our conditions are in such peril kind of this year. And in the last couple of years, I've been in a really, really tight situation. And so we're learning to kind of dance around this all together as a group. So it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. You know, another group that I really respect is Pig Farm Inc. And you've got those guys over there, you know, with a wonderful message, and they're coming in doing river cleanups every year. You know, we're pulling hundreds of tires out of the river. We're pulling so much garbage from the flooding out of the river, and forming a community. Housefly down in PA, in Hawley, you know, got a wonderful group of people. And so I think like you'd be amazed at how many hundreds of people come from all over the tri-state area to work on this river, to save the river, to help each other catch more fish, to teach kids, to take out veterans. It's like, without these people, I know me personally, I would have been able to do this job. I wouldn't have a clue what I was doing, you know? And that's kind of the level of respect I think we all hold for each other.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like a very respectful group of people that just understand that at the end of the day, like, we're all trying to make a living within this industry, and there's no animosity there. Like, there's plenty of space for everybody. There's plenty of people out there that want to fly fish, and like, as long as you're doing everything in the right way and respectfully, like, there's room for you. So I think that's beautiful.
There is. It's, you know, it's a highly pressured fishery, and we all know that. And so it's a matter of, by the end of the season, or like even right now, you know that you're going to be low hold. You're going to be sharing water with a couple other boats, possibly, especially on a weekend. And you just need to be nice to each other, give each other space, the space that you can, share in the humor, because, you know, we're all in the same rat race together, and we're all worn out by this time of year, and just trying to get that fish in the net and show people a good time in conditions with tons of forest fires, smoke pouring in. The skies are golden. People are coughing up smoke, and it's 90 degrees out, and the water's low and getting warm. And if we don't play well together, it's not going to work out for any of us. And everybody leaves the water tense and unhappy and angry at each other. And I know the groups of people that I fish with, none of them operate like that. We can't afford to operate like that. We just try to like support each other and make sure we're all taken care of. You know, that's all we have. We're alone up there, you know. So
you mentioned a little bit on kind of conservation, a little bit of stream cleanups and things that happen in the area. What does conservation look like in the area for you guys, and how does that bleed into the way that you teach clients, the way that you operate when you're kind of teaching a new angler how to fish an area?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, the current situation is a good illustration of this. Our water is so low. You know, we are fed out of multiple reservoirs in different ways, and most of our rivers are. But a lot of these reservoirs are used to supply and store water for Manhattan and other metropolitan areas. And now we're in a stage where, even though they're overflowing, they want to hold on to so much water that we're fishing in, you know, water that's getting way too warm by noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, when if it was managed correctly, we would have wonderful water all year and everybody would be happy. There's plenty of water to go around, plenty of store. We've got billions of gallons sitting there just waiting while we're out here banging our boats up, just trying to find fish in puddles. And so a lot of what I'm teaching clients, especially new clients now, is is where we should fish when they approach it, where they're going to look at their temperatures and how to understand their temperature changes throughout a day. And as far as mileage, to know that if they're going to go to our river right now, they're going to fish the West Branch or the East Branch or the main stem, they need to be very cognizant of our temperature and our flows and what the stress is like on the fish. These fish and the environment give us our livelihood and everything that we live for at the moment. So that will not be around if we're in there poaching fish, if people are killing fish, if fish are dying in people's nets. And so we are like broken records to our clients now. And we're saying, no, you want to fish the main stem? I'll guide you, but I will not take you there. I will take you high up and we will find ice cold water and we will fish in certain bite windows that are going to keep those fish safe. And so a lot of that is temperature-based conservation right now, because of the crazy water management that we are experiencing this year, which is kind of nuts. So I think leaving people with the idea that they need to drop a thermometer and they need to get on the Rivers app on their phone every day before fishing and the night before and look at the trend, figure out what their water is going to be like by 2:00 in the afternoon, and know that if they feel that water not really feeling that cold anymore, they need to get out and move on. And that is like a huge lesson that we're fighting every day. We're finding dead fish all over from people fishing in areas they should not even be near. And it's an uphill battle. And now with more and more people coming in and trying to poach fish, we're finding piles of dead fish lately that have been gutted and cleaned in 75-degree water, which is kind of nuts. And so we're battling a lot with educating some of the public coming in and fighting some of the politics behind water, the water flows and the releases of our reservoirs. The cool thing is, though, we do have a series of river cleanups every year at the Delaware River Club and Pig Farm Inc. They come in, they do the get trash cleanup, and they do it on different cleanups on different rivers in the area. But those guys come in, they throw a big party, we have a great time, and they spend a day and a half cleaning up. I think their average is 72 tires in a day coming out of that river from the early season flooding. We've got these groups, but we teach our clients every day, it's got to be you. If you walk by that trash, you better pick it up. You hook up someone else's line buried on the bottom of the river, you better pick that up, and we're putting it in the boat. We're going to put it in a bag, and we're going to throw it away or recycle it at the end of the day. Because if you don't, next year, this place might not be here. Didymo is another thing that we fight in the state, and it's definitely been introduced on parts of our Delaware system and other rivers. And as you know, that's a really destructive thing. And so we're constantly educating people on making sure their gear is super clean, disinfected, top to bottom, over and over and over again, because once that stuff is introduced, you can't get rid of it. And we're trying to stop the spread of it. It's already here, but we're trying to kind of pump the brakes on some of these invasive things that are happening to our river. In 10 years from now, it may not be a cold water fishery anymore. It might go back to where it started, which is a bass fishery. And that's what we're facing unless we change the way people see this stuff and look at this. It's an emergency, and it has to be dealt with. It should have been dealt with already, and it's an everyday thing that we are watching change. I'll tell you, the early season, for instance, and I'm sure other guides will tell you this, our bug count, if you get a hatch chart and you look at the hatch chart, it's shifted. And every year it shifts a little more and a little more. And now we're getting bugs in early spring that we didn't get till early summer. And everything is moving back. And if you tell me global warming isn't real, well, there's the proof is in the pudding. So we're fighting a battle that's bigger than us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing about guides that are so important, because at the end of the day, they're kind of like the turnkey of the industry, where it's like a guide is going to probably have 100 to 200 clients throughout the year, and that's 100 to 200 opportunities to create fishermen that are fishing with an ideology, fishing in a way that's going to promote the right things for the fishery, keep that fishery around, do things that are going to keep the fish safe, that type of thing. And so there's an awesome opportunity among guides all across the United States to fish the right way and kind of be that leader to the people that they fish with. Because if they can teach that to those anglers, it's just going to spread that kind of as in an exponential way. I think that's a big thing that guides need to think about as well.
Absolutely. And the same goes for etiquette. Right now, every day we're fighting people and their views on what the etiquette should be. And there are right answers to these questions. And so we're constantly trying to educate our clients to not be the ones that are going to low hole, are going to mess with other people's fishing experiences, are going to spoil fisheries in different ways for other people by fishing unethically at times they shouldn't be, or in places that they should probably leave alone. And so it's part of our greater mission as guides. And if it's not part of your mission, I'd invite you to revisit that, because, year after year, I'm watching it get crazier out there, and we're fighting harder for water, and it's getting tighter, and there's less space. And so we have a greater responsibility, I think, to our fishery than what we're seeing out there right now. We talk about this every day together, about the stuff that we're seeing and the ways we can shut it down. The coolers of fish coming out of catch and release only fishing up here is spectacular. So
yeah. What is, like, if it was up to you, if it was up to like your community of guides, what would be some changes that you'd like to see made for your fisheries? And do you see any upcoming organizations that you have a lot of hope in, as far as like doing a lot of the work to make that happen?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the Trout Unlimited has done a lot of the work. They've done a lot of work around our state. We have a lot of rebuilding projects, a lot of tree planting to do, and that's yeoman's work that needs to be done. But it leaves kind of that fly fishing only perspective. It's really the work that we need to see done is really water management and, kind of cooperation, I think, on upper levels. The Friends of the Upper Delaware, the FUDR, have done amazing work, not only in the conservation side, but also helping right now they have the Bill Canfield fly fishing camp for kids. And so we're doing amazing stuff to raise money, to take care of stuff, to keep the upkeep. But the amount of work in the state politics that needs to go into increasing our cold water and sharing the cold water and managing that cold water is above my head. It's above a lot of my knowledge. I can't wrap my head around the amount of paperwork and the lobbying that takes. I mean, I think this is decades old, and it's a fight that is hard won. But with cold, clear water every day of the year, not only would we be in better shape as guides and our clients have a more enjoyable experience, but the wildlife is going to thrive, the bugs are going to thrive, the fish are going to thrive, all the creatures that surround these and all the wildlife, and we won't feel so much like every day we go out there, we're possibly causing harm with every fish that we hook. We're constantly concerned with it. I'm landing my fish into clear plastic containers underwater so that I don't have to expose them to air. I'm trying to land them in water and release them without touching them as often, without getting as many grip and grins, because we're having, guides are reporting fish floating to the top in their nets, even in water that feels cold. And this is all at a larger state level. This is at a water management level in Cannonsville and all of the other reservoirs around us. They've got tons of water. It's overflowing. We need the water, and we need it now. It's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a huge, it's much bigger than us. It's much bigger than the fishing aspect of it.
Definitely. And I assume that that's kind of your reason to make this move towards some smaller streams, some smaller, like mountain streams. I'd love to hear about that program and kind of what you're looking to do with that. What's the experience that you're looking to offer to clients with that?
Absolutely. I think, we talk a lot about okay, season's tough, trout fishing is getting tough. A lot of guys run to smallmouth fishing. I do where I'm able to. I don't have a good truck. I can't get to a lot of great smallmouth fisheries and trophy smallmouth in the state or in the area. So I have to kind of come up with an alternate route. And fishing with some of the guides that I do in some of these places, we're hiking. Some places are right off the highway. We're finding water that has nice cold springs that you would normally drive by and forget about, but we go down and test the water. We know it's ice cold. We know it's holding big fish. These drive-by spots are spots that are definitely blue line spots, and it hasn't really picked up steam yet, but we're trying to get people interested in leaving the boat behind, leaving the highly pressured fishing behind, maybe going off the beaten path and finding some new water that you would normally not consider, that we know have fish, that we know have healthy fish that are safe to be caught. Trout and smallmouth. I mean, there's definitely smallmouth opportunities in and around the state, as well as Pennsylvania, and things like that. Now, part of it will be, I will guide some of it, and I have other guides kind of in my close circle of friends who are really just getting started, who are like experts in some of these small streams and some of this work, that can offer like really unique kind of mind-bending experiences. I had a friend take me out to a spot the other day. I said, show me one of these, show me one of these blue lines you talk about. And next thing you know, we're standing there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon feeding 20-inch brown trout foam hoppers in ice cold water while the Delaware is roasting at 70 degrees, and it's 95 degrees out. And we're catching massive fish that are extremely healthy, and in places that I've driven by my entire career and never thought twice about. And I was like, this just changed my mindset. I gotta stop being so religious about what I do and opening it up, whether it's me guiding or opening up to possibly sending other people in those directions, because I have a group of friends who all do these, to give people these options, because they people get dead set. I want to be on the Delaware River. I want to be on the upper Delaware. I want to be a West Branch angler, and I want to be there this weekend. And then you say to them, well, those fish are dying and they're stressed and they're hiding from everything right now. Give them a break. We got to change that mindset. So people say, cool, well, what else? Show me something I've never considered. And that's kind of what we're playing with and trying to build as we get interest. Eventually, I think either by this fall or by the beginning of next season, that will be a full-time aspect of my program, and hopefully a program I'm hoping to build as I learn how to build my business larger and larger, and possibly hire other guides, as an outfitter perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's going to look like or how to go about it, but I do know that there are these opportunities, and there are guides out there that have the potential to do this, that just haven't been given the opportunity to,
Mm-hmm.
And it blew my mind. I had one of the best days of fishing in water that I've driven over a million times, that I've always been like, that's trash. And I walked in there and I was like, never mind. I'm a complete liar. That was amazing. And I want to come back here every single day. I want to sink my boat to the bottom of the river, and I want to stand here every day and do this instead. And every time I go out, I'm finding more and more places like this, that if you're willing to walk a little bit and leave things behind and just fish the water and trust that there's something there, you'll be amazed. And that's kind of where we're headed, I think. I would also like, in the same vein, to offer, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but I do want to offer a muskie program, and I think that this will eventually stem into like some skinny water muskie as we branch out farther and farther into the state. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see where it goes. Would love to help out in any way that we can. That sounds like a very cool program. And I would love to experience it myself. So, yeah.
Come on out.
I think I might have to. Well, yeah, I mean, that's, we're kind of nearing around an hour. So I want to, that's kind of what I said that we'd end at, but hopefully we'll have you on here again soon. If you don't mind, I would love to hear your honest opinion, and it can be bad things, good things, about what your experience has been like with GoGuide, using the system, any things that we can improve upon, any things that you've found to be really helpful.
I think the number one thing that I've noticed that's been really, really good is that, if there's ever something that we see, and I know other guys have had this experience too, if there's something we see and we say, oh, I can't, just on the logistical side, something's off or I can't figure this out, the customer service and like the expediency of like having technical difficulties or technical things figured out or explained or worked through or functional has been like, is crazy, like lightning speed. Like customer service is really spooky good in in an unexpected way, not a way you would expect from anybody in these days when it's really hard to get done. So I think that having the needs met is the most impressive aspect about it. In a quick and efficient way, because a lot of times these things are like last minute. They're coming up. You got paying clients. They want answers. They definitely want them right now. And Lord knows I don't have the answers. And I can call any one of you guys, and I know you're going to work your magic, and the website's going to work. The schedule's going to go through. The trip's going to get booked. Whatever has to happen is going to happen. And that's a massive load off of our minds, I think, for all of us. I can probably speak for everybody when I say that, because those of us, especially that run our own business and we're interacting one-on-one with clients, it's no longer a shop dealing with issues on our behalf. We have to be the face of that. And that allows us a way to do it professionally without having to look cluttered, confused, lost. I can just say, hold on, let me call my Go Guide buddies. We're going to get this taken care of, and it's done. So I think that's important.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's definitely something that's been important for us, as far as just like we don't want anybody to ever have a bad experience with the system. And for us, it's like, that's the most important thing. When we get a call from one of our guys that we're working with, it's like, that's top priority. Let's get it taken care of. And I'm glad that you feel that way, because that's something that's super important. I just want to say it's been great working with you. We appreciate so much that you gave us a chance to, we kind of came to you with a much more half-baked idea than where we are today. And you were willing to be like, yeah, I'd love to give it a shot and see how it goes. And I mean, it's been incredible working with you. So
thank you.
Super excited to see where things go. I hope that we can continue working together for a long time and be a part of your growing business.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for working so hard.